Good morning, class, and welcome back to World History. Today we'll be talking about science and reason and the development of these two topics in the 16th and 17th century. We will be focusing on chapters 22, pages 497 through 514. These are the first two sections of chapter 2. The objective of this class is students will learn about the scientific revolution and the age of Enlightenment and the major figures that influence these two periods of history. As we go through, I want you to think about our central questions. How did the views of the Renaissance influence the Enlightenment? And how did the age of exploration affect the science and the views of the scientific revolution? Some reminders is that we have your unit test due this week. Make sure you're checking your schedule daily and check the grades tab for any missing work you might have. Also take a second to check out our important vocabulary that we'll be discussing in this video. So, the scientific revolution. What is the scientific revolution? Well, it was the beginning of what we call modern science. Basically, it's this idea of discovering the world through the sciences. And there's quite a lot of different sciences, and all of them are a study of something specific. So the study of anatomy, which is the exploration of the human body. That was by a man named Valesius, who kind of began to really build out what a human body looked like. He drew these drawings of different aspects of the human body and kind of what the muscles look like, what the bones look like, what the organs look like. You have astronomy, which is the study of the universe. We have two big people who are part of this. We have Copernicus, who developed the new view of the universe, this idea that the sun was at the middle of the universe and everything revolved around the sun versus it revolving around the earth, which was what was previously believed. And then you have Galileo, who began to develop the telescope and other major inventions that kind of helped really expand the understanding of what the universe looked like. He discovered Jupiter and some of his moons, created a compass and improved upon the compass, and invented what was actually our best known telescope of the time. In addition, we have mathematics that will really begin to develop during this time. You have Bacon, who developed the scientific method, as you've probably seen in your math and science classes, as well as Descartes, who discovered modern math and kind of the modern philosophies we have with math, brought in algebra, kind of helped develop statistics and calculus, and he is, and as well as geometry. Geometry is his big discovery. He linked geometry and algebra together to solve problems, which made it so much easier to build architecture and discover how things worked, as well as kind of birth what we know as modern science today. Modern math. Other big influences, we have Isaac Newton. You might have heard of him. He is famous for discovering the laws of gravity, this idea that what goes up must come down. And the story goes that he was sitting on an apple tree just reading a book when an apple fell on his head, and it kind of gave him this idea. We also have Boyle, who is the father of modern chemistry. Boyle helped discover the introduced gas laws and kind of gave us this idea of an atom and matter that we still use today that is really influential on our math and sciences. So the lasting impact of the scientific revolution, well, there's three major things. First off, it created a new way of thinking and observing the world. It was no longer about kind of what you thought or religious ideas. It was about discovering things through math and science, through experimentation, and through discovery and observation and data collecting. Another big thing is you have a new way of communicating data with the scientific method, as well as a lot of these other sciences. It became easier to express ideas about science and begin to really discover things that were previously undiscoverable due to the limited tools available at the time. This marks the birth of modern thinking, this idea of observation, reasoning, and science that we have and we use today in the world that you probably experience when you go to your science classes, come from these people in this period of time called the scientific revolution. In addition to discoveries in science, this period of time allowed for the discoveries of thought. what we call the Enlightenment. This was a period of reasoning. This idea was that enlightenment was an intellectual idea that power of reason would equal perfect society. If you had reason and people could reason out problems, then you could develop the perfect society. And there's a lot of people who really influence this way of thought. Two of the biggest is Hobbes and Locke. John Locke wrote two treatises of government. This was believed to be the law of nature regarding government in the natural world, as well as what exactly was the government's job. And he declared that the government's job was to protect the natural rights of life, liberty, and property, which would be a huge thing because it would lead to some of the modern revolutions that we had today, including the American Revolution was based on this idea. We also have Thomas Hobbes, who wrote the book called The Leviathan, and it was basically this idea that humans were not good. Humans were not good people. They were selfish. They were violent. They were prone to violent things. And he believed that the best government was an absolute monarchy to limit the ability of others. That being said, not everyone agreed with him. You had other different views and ideas about government. You had French philosophers known as Friends of Wisdom who developed their own ideas. You have Montesquieu, who wrote The Spirit of Law, which we have today as knowing of the three types of governments: monarchies, republics, as well as despotics, which is like dictatorships. He was in favor of monarchies and republics and was against despotics or dictatorships. He also developed the three branches of government that we use today: the legislative branch, which is our Congress; the executive branch, which is the presidency; and the judicial branch, which is our Supreme Court. So we use these today, and they're based on Montesquieu's views and ideas. You also have Voltaire. Voltaire's a pen name for him so that he wouldn't get in trouble for his ideas. He tended to be very antagonistic, and so he had a pen name. He was opposed to religion, opposed to government. He believed that most people should not be involved in these aspects. He wrote a lot of critiques about government, a lot of critiques about kings and advisors and people of that nature. He was also a deist. This was a philosophy that was really kind of becoming popular during this time. It was the belief that God, or whoever created the universe, was after they created the universe, they kind of stepped back and they let everything be where it was, and they didn't influence it anymore. And that's actually why we have laws of nature, because of those rules that were put in place. You also have others who created new social ideas. So while government and was influenced during this time, you also have an influence on social ideas. So we have Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who wrote The Discord on the Origin of Inequity, which was to believe the government was based on general will. Basically, he believed that freedom was key to everybody, and he believed that we should have a social contract and agree to subordinate self-interest to the general will, which basically means you'll be nice to me if I'm nice to you. What we consider the golden rule today, right? Be good to others because they're good to you, and that idea is based on this idea that Jean-Jacques. You also had Mary Wollstonecraft, who wrote Vindication of the Rights of Women as a response to other writings of the time based on Vindication of the Rights of Men. It was basically, at this time, women were considered to be not mentally able enough to reason and do thought and like be in part of the sciences and maths and reason and do all these things. Mary basically said that's not true at all. Women are more than capable of reason. Women should have the right to do these things. And it was one of the first ever works of feminism that kind of led to the feminist movement of the 18th and 19th and into the 20th century. You also have Adam Smith, who wrote Wealth of Nation. Basically was the father of modern economics and wrote on what economics looks like, what capitalism should look like. He hated mercantilism, hated monopolies, believed in an equal distribution of goods and services, and that competition helped prices, but so you shouldn't ever monopolize or try to take control. You should allow for free trade along other people, which is also a concept that we use today in the United States. At this time, you also have the development of art through the Enlightenment period. One of the biggest things that were developed was neoclassicalism. Neoclassicalism is this idea of art created through reason and intellect. So art and drawings were based on classical drawings that you would see, classical art that you would see in the Roman and Greek period, but everything was based on reason, symmetrical lines, focal pointing, making everything seem very centered and angular, as well as very just geometrically sound. And you see this with the Oath of Harari, this painting right here, and how the lines of it was meant to showcase a certain value. You see the pointing of the legs and the angles to create these triangle and arches, whereas to really create this feeling of reason and symmetry and intellect. At the same time, you have the development of what we know as classical music today. Bach, Handel, Mozart, Beethoven all began to really become popular and wrote during this time, creating the modern classical music that we have today. All of this based on this value of reason, of intellect, of the symmetry and angles and geometry that comes from the development of the scientific revolution and of the Enlightenment period. So basically, science and reason were two major aspects of this area of time. Primarily the 16th, 17th into the 18th century. That's the 1500s all the way to the 1900s. But the biggest period of time is the 1600s and the 1700s. They explored the body, explored their universe, explored tiny molecules and chemistry. This was age of reason, of enlightenment, of learning things and gaining new values and new ideas on things, as well as the discovery of a new type of art, this neoclassic, modern, new classical, new modern idea. The biggest things to remember here is this period of time is about discovery, reason, and knowledge. These things are your main ideas: discovery, reason, and knowledge. So as you take some time to look over this, make sure to remember to take your participation quiz that is due this week after this video. Make sure to call, come to office hours, or email me if you need anything at all. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.